In today's lesson, we shall discuss the reason for the construction of the Uganda Railway, problems encountered during the construction, and the effects. The colonial government was determined to develop Kenya socially and economically in order to make the colony pay for its administrative costs. In order to open up the territory, the British had to establish better means of transport and communication. This led to the construction of the Uganda Railway. The need to construct the Uganda Railway started with the ideas of William Mackinnon, who was in charge of the Imperial British East Africa Company. The railway started in 1895 and was completed in 1901. It was called Uganda Railway because it linked Uganda to the outside world. The reasons for the construction of the railway were as follows: to link Uganda with the Kenyan coast and the outside world, to enhance maximum economic exploitation of the East African Protectorate, to facilitate quick and efficient movement of administrators and troops, to stop slave trade and promote legitimate trade, to enable Britain protect her strategic interest of the source of River Nile in Uganda. What were the problems encountered during the construction of the Kenya-Uganda Railway? Some of the problems were as follows. The British had to import skilled and unskilled labor from India. Resistance by some African communities who did not want the railway to cross their land, such as the Nandi. Imposition of materials from abroad increased the cost of construction. The man-eating lions of Tsavo killed many workers. Scarcity of essential supplies, for example water and food, particularly across the dry wasteland. Tropical diseases such as malaria claimed the lives of railway builders. The escarpments of the Rift Valley posed engineering challenges to the railway construction. Jiggers were a problem to the Indian workers who are walking bare feet. The Uganda Railway had several effects on the people of Kenya, which were both social and economic. Some of them were development of urbanization in the interior along the railway line. It opened up the interior of Kenya. It brought in white settlers who introduced cash crops and new methods of farming. The settlers occupied the fertile highlands, which made some Africans landless. The Indians who had come as railway workers settled in Kenya permanently. It encouraged the spread of Christianity. It promoted trade, both local and international. It encouraged construction of other means of transport and communication, such as roads. It led to the redrawing of the Kenya-Uganda railway boundary. It led to the transfer of the capital of Kenya from Mombasa to Nairobi. In today's lesson, we shall learn about the settler farming in Kenya, reasons why the government encouraged white settlers, and the methods used by the colonial government to promote settler farming. There were various reasons why the colonial government encouraged the white settlers to come to Kenya. Some of them were to make Kenya a white man's country, since they would form the backbone of the economy, to help finance the administrative costs, to produce the raw materials for British industries. The Africans lacked funds and skills of large-scale farming. Check Asian migration and influence by settling more whites. To pay for the construction cost of the Kenya-Uganda Railway. The colonial government used various methods to promote settler farming in Kenya. Some of these methods were as follows: provided land, improved transport and communication network, formation of cooperatives for marketing their goods, provided security, banned Africans from growing cash crops, and provided agricultural extension services to settlers. Farming in the Kenyan highlands was not an easy task. The first European farmers faced a wide range of problems, some of which include the following: constant raids in the farms by the local communities, for example the Nandi and the Maasai, many Africans were not willing to offer labor. Settlers lacked basic knowledge, skills and experience on agriculture, shortage of funds to buy farm inputs or machinery, poor transport and communication network, for example, roads and railways. The settlers lacked knowledge about the seasons. Pests and diseases affected crops and animals. The white farmers introduced cash crops and exotic breeds of livestock in Kenya. Some of them were coffee. This was one of the earliest cash crop. It was first planted around Taita Taveta before later moving into Central Province. It became more prominent here. Another cash crop was wheat, which was introduced by Lord Delamere in Joro in 1903. Wheat is grown in Nakuru and Uasin Gishu. Sisal was another cash crop introduced in 1893 from Tanganyika by Richard Hindrich. Today, the crop is mainly grown in Thika, Eastern Province, Kibwezi, Baringo, Voi, Taita Taveta and Kilifi. Tea was introduced in Kenya in 1903 at Limuru by Messrs. Care. It is currently grown in Kericho, Nandi, Murang'a, Meru, Nyeri and Kiambu. Livestock was introduced by settlers like Lord Delamere. He introduced the rearing sheep and cattle in Joro. The colonial government encouraged white settlers in Kenya through creating land policies that legalized the alienation of land from the Africans for white settlement. The government alienated land to enable the settlers establish large-scale farming. This was done by passing legislation legalizing the annexation of land through legislative councils. These legislations came to be known as land policies. They were the Indian Acquisition Act of 1896, which empowered the government to take over land for the construction of the railway line. The Land Legislation Act of 1897, which enabled the government to offer certificate of occupation. The 1907 East African Order in Council, which defined Crown land as all public land which is not private and the government would take it at will, sell or lease it. The Maasai Agreement of 1904, which pushed the Maasai to Laikipia and Gong reserves. Settlers were encouraged to take up the Maasai land for farming. The colonial land policies had a number of effects on the people of Kenya. These include the Africans lost their land, Africans were pushed to the reserves, for example the Maasai. Land alienation stopped widespread migration and settlements of the Africans. It led to the introduction of the Kipande system. Many Africans became squatters and laborers in European farms. It also led to the rise of African nationalism and the struggle for independence. We shall start our lesson by identifying the groups involved in the development of education in Kenya during the colonial period. These were the Christian missionaries, the colonial government, Africans, and Asians.